All right, everybody, welcome in. We're diving deep today into The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Got our notes and sources ready right here. And let me tell you, this ancient text, it's got some really surprising insights for today's world.
You know what's so fascinating? Sun Tzu's principles, they're not just about battlefield
Yeah.
tactics. He really gives us this framework for strategic thinking. You can use it in any situation. When you're trying to reach a goal or overcome a challenge.
Okay, so we're not just talking about like winning arguments with our buddies, right? Although that would be pretty handy sometimes.
Well, it could be helpful for that too. But think about it more seriously. Business negotiations, career advancements, even relationships. Sun Tzu's wisdom can actually help you out in all these areas.
All right, so let's unpack this ancient wisdom. Give me the Spark Notes version of Sun Tzu's core philosophy.
At the heart of it, Sun Tzu's philosophy, it's all about getting victory through intelligence and strategy, minimizing destruction whenever you can. He thought the best victories, the ones with the least losses, for both sides.
You know, that's interesting. Most people, when they think of the art of war, they're probably thinking of like these huge battles, all-out warfare. But it sounds like Sun Tzu was pushing for a more calculated, even maybe a compassionate approach.
Exactly. He knew that real strength, it's about outsmarting your opponent, not just overpowering them. You know, a lot of his teachings, they're about avoiding unnecessary conflict and picking your battles carefully.
So it's about being strategic, deliberate, thinking a few steps ahead, kind of like a chess grandmaster.
You get it. And this is where Sun Tzu's historical examples, they come alive. Take Cyrus the Great conquering Babylon, for example.
Oh yeah, I read about that in the article you sent. Cyrus takes over this whole empire. No big battles. Mind-blowing.
It really shows his brilliance and strategy. Cyrus knew that a long siege, it would cost a lot, be destructive for everyone. So he used psychological warfare, diplomacy, even some clever engineering to take the city peacefully.
All right, break it down for me. Explain it like I'm 5. How'd he do it?
First, he diverted the Euphrates River, lowered the water level. His troops, they snuck in through the riverbed. But the really cool part, Cyrus, he did a lot of work to win over the people in Babylon. He said, hey, I'm a liberator, not a conqueror. Promised to respect their customs, their belief.
Well, he was winning hearts and minds before he even got there.
Yeah, he knew how important psychological warfare was, controlling the story. By the time his troops marched into Babylon, a lot of the citizens were cheering for them, like heroes.
Wow, that is next-level strategy. But I bet not everyone was so subtle, so sophisticated.
True. Look at Richard the Lionheart conquering Cyprus. Total opposite of Cyrus. Richard, known for his boldness, his military power, went with a more direct, forceful approach.
Didn't he, like, sail straighter to the harbor and say, surrender?
That's the one. And while he did conquer Cyprus, his aggressive tactics, they backfired. He alienated the locals, caused logistic nightmares, actually weakened his position in the region.
So even though he got what he wanted at first, his approach kind of blew up in his face.
Yeah. Richard's Cyprus conquest, it's a warning. Shows how important it is to think about the long-term consequences. Brute force doesn't always get you a lasting win.
That makes me think about how Sun Tzu emphasized avoiding destruction, right? He saw the value in saving resources and minimizing casualties.
Exactly. He thought a real victory makes you stronger, not weaker. That means keeping losses low, preserving what you've got, even treating the people you defeat with a little respect.
Pretty ahead of his time for a guy writing about war centuries ago. Speaking of minimizing casualties, Sun Tzu had some strong feelings about sieges, right?
Oh, he did. Sieges, last resort, full of risks. Often meant everyone suffered for a long time. He really pushed for ending sieges quickly, if he absolutely had to have one, and do it in a way that minimized the damage to the city and the people in it.
Yeah, makes sense. Sieges sound brutal. Imagine being stuck in a city, under attack all the time, running out of food, disease spreading.
Oh, and the mental strain. Sun Tzu got that. He really believed in strategy, intelligence, to outmaneuver your opponent, not just outlasting them through willpower.
Which leads us to another big point. Sun Tzu's focus on patience and being able to adapt. He thought rushing into action without a plan. Recipe for disaster, right?
Absolutely. Always warning about impatience. Hasty actions, they lead to messy attacks, losses you could have avoided. Morale takes a nosedive. A smart commander waits for the right time, strikes with precision, overwhelming force.
Okay, starting to get it. Be like a surfer, waiting for that perfect wave. You don't just paddle out there and hope for the best, right? You watch, you figure out the conditions, and you strike when the time is right.
That's a great way to put it. Sun Tzu, I bet he'd be a killer surfer. He really understood timing, how to adjust your strategy to what's going on around you.
So not about having one rigid plan and sticking to it no matter what. It's about being flexible, changing your approach as you go, always one step ahead of your opponent.
Yeah. He actually compared a good general to water, flowing around obstacles, always adapting to the land. Being rigid, on the other hand,
Yeah.
leads to getting stuck, losing.
I like that. So we've talked about knowing yourself and your opponent, avoiding unnecessary damage, being patient, and adapting to the situation. But how does this all translate to actual fighting? Did Sun Tzu have rules for combat?
He did. And this is where force ratios come in. It's one of the more technical parts of his teachings, but it's super important for understanding how he approached war.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break down this force ratio thing for me.
It basically means how many more soldiers one side has than the other.
Okay.
Sun Tzu didn't think just having more guys meant you'd win. He actually gave detailed instructions on how to approach different force ratios, whether you have more soldiers, fewer soldiers, or you're facing an enemy that's the same size.
So even if you're outnumbered, you can still win by maneuvering strategically.
Right. He thought even with a smaller army, you can get an advantage. Smart tactics, deception, picking the right battles.
This is getting good. Okay, let's say I'm totally outnumbered, like 10 to 1. What would Sun Tzu tell me to do?
In that case, he'd probably say avoid a head-on fight. He might suggest harassing the enemy from afar, using guerrilla tactics to wear them down, mess with their supplies.
So use your speed and knowledge of the terrain to your advantage.
You got it. And he might say, try to find allies. Try to even the odds. Remember, for Sun Tzu, war was a last resort. He always preferred to win through diplomacy, smart maneuvering, if possible.
It's like how George Washington fought in the American Revolution. He was always outsmarting the British, picking his battles, even using strategic retreats to save his troops.
You're right. Washington, he was a brilliant military leader. A lot of historians think he was inspired by Sun Tzu's teachings. He knew going head-to-head with the British in a traditional war, disaster. They had way more soldiers, resources. So he played the long game, avoided big clashes, wore the enemy down over time.
That's amazing. So even centuries later, Sun Tzu's ideas were still working, helping people win against impossible odds.
Exactly. That's why his work is so timeless. It's not just about old battles. It's about understanding people's strategy, the principles of success. They apply to everything.
This has been so fascinating, but we've barely scratched the surface. I'm ready to go deeper, see how we can use these ideas in our own lives with our own challenges.
That's exactly what we'll do in the next part of our deep dive. Get ready to discover how Sun Tzu's wisdom can help you in the modern world.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, explored some of Sun Tzu's core principles. Now I'm really curious, how can we actually use this ancient wisdom today in our modern lives?
That's what's so exciting. Because believe it or not, the art of war, it's not just for generals and battle strategists, right? It gives us this powerful framework to reach our goals and handle challenges in any area.
Okay, I'm ready to level up my life. Where do we start?
Let's go back to that basic principle, the one we talked about earlier. Know yourself and your enemy.
Right. It's like Sun Tzu's greatest hit, right. But how do we use this today in a modern context?
It begins with taking a long, honest look at yourself. Your strengths, weaknesses, values, aspirations. What are you really good at? Where are your blind spots? What really drives you?
So it's like doing a personal SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
You got it. Once you have a good understanding of what's going on inside, you can turn your attention to the enemy, or in this case, the challenge you're facing.
Okay, so let's say I'm trying to start a new business. My enemy could be my competitors, market trends, even like my own self-doubt.
Exactly. It's about spotting those roadblocks in your way and really getting them. Their strengths, weaknesses.
Okay, this is starting to make sense. So we've done our homework. We know ourselves and our enemy. What's the next step?
Then we get to the strategic planning. Sun Tzu really emphasized being prepared, anticipating problems, having multiple plans of attack.
So it's not enough to just have a goal. We need a roadmap, a plan to get there.
Absolutely. Think of it like going on a road trip across the country. You wouldn't just jump in the car and start driving, would you?
Oh, definitely not. I'd plan my route, check out interesting places, pack snacks. Oh, I make sure the car is good to go. Maybe have a backup plan in case of detours.
Exactly. It's the same for any big goal. You got to anticipate challenges, check your resources, and have a plan that can change if things change along the way.
This is where being able to adapt comes in, right? Sun Tzu was all about that.
Yeah, he was. He saw that if you're too rigid when something unexpected happens, it can be a disaster. A real strategist stays flexible, changes their approach as needed, never loses sight of the goal.
Isn't there a saying like, no plan survives contact with the enemy?
That's the one. You got to be ready to switch gears, improvise, make tough decisions on the spot.
So how do we become more flexible like that? Is it something we're born with? Or can we learn it?
It's definitely something you can develop. It starts with having a mindset of always learning, adapting. Stay up to date
Okay.
in your field. Be open to new ideas. Don't be afraid to try new things.
So be agile, responsive, always adjusting based on what you're seeing. Kind of like a martial artist, going with the flow of their opponent.
That's a great analogy. Now, another key part of Sun Tzu's teachings is the idea of picking your battles.
Ooh, I like that one. Definitely something I need to work on.
It's a crucial skill. Sun Tzu really stressed not getting into fights you don't need to, focusing your energy on the things that will actually make a difference.
So in a modern setting, that might mean saying no to things that don't fit my long-term goals, or not doing things that just waste my time and energy.
Exactly. Be strategic with your time, your resources. Invest them where they'll pay off the most.
It's like that quote, the difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything.
You got it. It's about being choosy, putting the important stuff first, not getting bogged down with distractions or pointless arguments.
This is all super insightful. So we've got knowing yourself, knowing your enemy, planning, adapting, and choosing your battles. Anything else we should remember as we navigate this crazy modern life?
Well, there's one more principle from Sun Tzu that's really relevant today. It's the idea of deception and surprise. He believed a good strategist should always keep their opponent guessing, using misdirection, unexpected moves to get ahead.
I'm listening. Sounds a little sneaky, though. Are we talking about lying and manipulating people?
Not exactly. It's not about being unethical or tricking people. It's more about using your smarts and creativity to gain an edge.
So give me an example. How would you use this in like a business deal?
You could come to the negotiation with other offers that you're willing to drop, making your opponent think they've won that point while you're actually steering them toward what you really want. Or you could use creative strategies to mess with their expectations, throw them off balance.
So it's more like a chess match than a street fight.
You got it. You're trying to outsmart your opponent, not beat them up.
I like that. But I gotta admit, all this talk about war and competition can feel a little intense. What about those of us who aren't naturally competitive or strategic? Can we still benefit from Sun Tzu's ideas?
Absolutely. Remember, at its core, Sun Tzu's teachings are about winning with the least amount of conflict and damage. It's about using your intelligence, creativity, and strategic thinking to handle challenges well and reach your goals in a way that minimizes harm and maximizes good outcomes.
That's a much more empowering way to look at it. So these principles can apply to everything, even personal relationships or creative projects.
Absolutely. Whether you're negotiating a raise, launching a new project, or even navigating a tough family situation, Sun Tzu's wisdom can help.
Wow, this has been really eye-opening, seeing how we can use Sun Tzu's wisdom in our modern lives. But I'm curious to see how this all plays out in the real world.
Well, you're in luck. In our final segment, we'll be looking at some inspiring examples of people and organizations that have used these principles to achieve amazing things.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into the art of war. We've broken down Sun Tzu's main ideas and even seen how they can apply to our own lives. Now I'm excited to see this ancient wisdom in action. Give me some real-world examples.
I'd love to share Nelson Mandela's story. His leadership in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. It's a perfect example of strategic patience, resilience, and in the end, reconciliation.
I mean, Mandela spending 27 years in prison for his activism, that's incredible to go through that much hardship and not come out bitter, but with this vision of unity and forgiveness. It's almost superhuman.
It's remarkable, for sure. What makes Mandela's approach so amazing is that he got it. He understood that real change, it wasn't just about tearing down the system. He had to win people over, even the people who were oppressing him before.
So he wasn't just fighting against apartheid, he was fighting for a future where everyone in South Africa could live together in peace. He was thinking long term.
Exactly. Mandela knew that true victory, it wasn't about crushing your enemies, but turning them into allies. This goes right along with Sun Tzu's idea of winning without unnecessary destruction. It's about building something new, not just winning a fight.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest victories, they come not from force, but from compassion, from being willing to build bridges. We could all use a little more of that these days.
I agree. Speaking of building bridges, let's switch gears to the business world for a minute. Google's success is a really interesting case study in applying Sun Tzu's ideas to dominate a market.
Google. Really? I mean, they're a tech company, not an army. What's the connection to ancient military strategy?
Well, think about it. Google's at the top of the search engine world, right? It shows they've mastered some key principles from the art of war. First, they've always focused on innovation and adapting as technology changes.
True. They're constantly releasing new stuff, new features, products, updates. It's hard to keep up with them.
Right. And that constant innovation, it fits perfectly with Sun Tzu's idea of adapting. You got to constantly evolve your strategy to stay ahead of the game. For Google, the competition isn't just other search engines. It's anything online fighting for our attention and our time.
So they're always looking ahead, anticipating the next big thing, and getting ready to ride that wave. That's smart no matter what you're doing.
It is. Another reason Google's so successful is their laser focus on the user experience. They know their real customers are the people using their search engine. And they make sure that experience is easy, intuitive, and informative.
Yeah, I rarely even think about using anything other than Google. It's just so simple and it works.
That's no accident. Google's put a lot of effort into understanding how people use their search engine. They're constantly tweaking those algorithms and features to give the most relevant and helpful results. They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
So they're knowing their enemy, so to speak. In this case, the enemy is their users' needs and expectations, and they're changing their strategies to match.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by consistently exceeding user expectations, they've built up this incredible loyalty that's translated into dominating the market. A prime example of how understanding your audience and adapting to their needs, it's crucial for success, no matter what you're doing.
These examples are really inspiring. They show that Sun Tzu's wisdom, it's not just ancient history. It's a living philosophy that we can use to get amazing results in any area of life. I think we could all learn something from these examples.
And that brings us to the main takeaway from our deep dive. Sun Tzu's teachings are really about empowering people and organizations to be their best. It's about embracing strategic thinking, adaptability, and a commitment to always keep learning. These are tools anyone can use to face life's challenges and come out on top.
It's about understanding that challenges, they're part of the journey. But with the right attitude and the right tools, we can overcome them and come out the other side stronger, wiser.
Remember what Sun Tzu said, every battle is won before it is fought. Being prepared, having a strategy, and believing in your ability to succeed, those are essential for anything you want to do.
And on that note, we're wrapping up this incredible journey through the timeless wisdom of Sun Tzu. I hope you found some nuggets of wisdom you can use in your own life and in your own adventures.
Me too. And as always, keep those deep diving minds engaged, stay curious, and never stop learning.
Until next time, fellow deep divers.